I just finished watching the movie Waiting for Superman. I'll be honest, I'd avoided this movie for a long time because of what I'd heard about it. It was very anti-teacher and based many of its arguments on the flawed banking method of teaching. And these are two of the ideas that I struggle with the most. Perhaps because I've never had a bad teacher. Perhaps because I have so many teachers in my family and therefore can imagine them working toward anything but their highest potential. Perhaps because I have some serious ethical problems with the standardized testing movement in education today. Nonetheless, at the urging of my dear and amazing teacher friend Katie Green, I watched Waiting for Superman. And now I see why so many people want to get rid of public education. I had to face some hard facts about education, facts that I didn't want to face. But I noticed some misconceptions, too. Let's start with the parents and kids seen in Waiting for Superman. The film follows five families that are trying very hard to get into Pitt School, or specialized charter school. And I agree with the film that there are far too few spaces for these kids, and that vying for a position in one of these prestigious schools via a lottery is unjust. At the same time, I was saddened by the unspoken argument. What about the parents of kids who aren't involved? What about the parents who didn't fight to get their kids into the lottery program? Why not follow them? After all, the parents seen in this movie are not the norm. Otherwise, the lottery drawing would be so packed that no one could get in. I'm not saying that parents who don't fight to get their kids into the best schools are bad. I'm just saddened to know that instead of trying to fix public schools in their area, parents are forced to either resign themselves to failing schools or try to run away from it. What filmgoers miss in this movie is what I missed all along. Just because you grew up with active parents, good teachers, and an academically minded community does not mean that everyone does. Just because the parents in this movie have faith that education is the way out does not mean that everyone, or even that most people do. That's the first hard truth I had to face. I didn't want to admit that schools have failed children, but schools have failed many, many children. Had they not, you wouldn't hear stories of people graduating with little or no ability to read. There wouldn't be instances of 12% reading proficiency in a school. It's a hard truth. School, and yes, teachers, have failed. I still don't think A Nation at Risk is a good source for policymaking. I've read the report, and there's some serious flaws in how it analyzes data. Oddly enough, though, once you examine NAR, you come back to the previous point. The problems actually lie in the belief that all the social problems can be solved by improving schools alone, and the accompanying willingness to tolerate failures in other social institutions. My biggest problem with NAR is the policies that come from it. They refuse to acknowledge that there must be a myriad of social intervention in order for education to actually provide a way out of cyclic poverty. Poverty cannot be addressed by schools alone. On average, children from poverty have 70% of the vocabulary that the same-age child in a working-class family does, and about 45% of the vocabulary of a child from a professional family. If schools are agents of social change, then why do we not acknowledge that these students come in with deficits and address them? We cannot, like Waiting for Superman did, ignore the greater social problems of systemic poverty. Namely, that communities in poverty require multiple interventions to help them reverse that cycle. So too, we must acknowledge that if communities don't take a vested interest, public education will never get better. A successful school is surrounded by a network of people who work to see that school succeed, even if some of the people in the community don't have children going to that school. If a community is unable to do that, then the state should help the entire community to revitalize. So yes, schools failed children, but it wasn't just schools. We failed children. As a populace, we didn't provide interventions on a social level for all aspects of their lives, including their family lives. The second is a hard truth. Testing has its purpose. I don't like it. It's based on a flawed method of seeking knowledge. It bows to the lowest common denominator of intelligence. In fact, I see it as a way of making a permanent underclass. It ultimately devalues teaching and learning. The movie depicts teaching as opening a kid's head and pouring information inside. What a frightening thought. I hate this notion. But I teach high school. I don't teach lower grades where memorization is important. I do know that having a base upon which a student can formulate more abstract thought is necessary. I don't know that testing in some of the lower grades is necessarily all that bad. It makes me cringe, but I know that a student who comes into the ninth grade math class without the skills he or she should have gotten in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade will not be successful. So how does one ensure that? Portfolio-based systems are too expensive, so testing is a necessary evil. With that in mind, I go back to my previous argument. If we have testing, but the community does not have faith in it, why don't we change it? I'll give you a scenario. A student comes to me in the ninth grade with a reading proficiency far below the 7th grade level. I go back and look at his test scores and notice he failed 3 out of 5 sections of the CRCT and the writing section. Why is the student in my class?
He's in my class because there is no faith in the tests. A parent has the right to move his or her child on to the next grade level, and so does a school. Why would they do this? They don't feel the test accurately portrays the child's ability. Why not? For educators, it is that we have very little say in how the tests are made. For parents, it is that they often don't have faith in the education at all. So the child moves on and falls further and further behind. Waiting for Superman does accurately portray this with charts and graphs. It didn't, however, show the truth. The truth is that these kids, many with whom I have worked, don't just get forgotten. They are pushed and pulled through remediation courses. Teachers and parents alike shed blood, sweat, and tears over them. And in the end, they are not simply a data point moved along a graph, as seen in Waiting for Superman. They are people that many adults worked very hard to get through the system. This leads me to my last hard truth. I am not the center of the universe. Let me rephrase that. Teachers are not the center of the universe. I have to put my ego aside for a moment and realize I cannot force a kid to learn. Now again, disclaimer, I teach high school, so autonomy is important to my students. In lower grades, this may be less so. With that in mind, I give you the hardest scenario every teacher faces. There are students out there that just aren't interested in school. This could have to do with the fact that the curriculum doesn't speak to their interest. This could have to do with the rise in distracting technology, video game addiction, lack of faith in the purpose of education, or the transient nature of their living situation. It could be that a child is trying to signal to his or her parent that they are unhappy, and the only way to do that, despite having the skills necessary to be successful in my class, is to fail a particular course. I have lost countless hours of sleep to children that I just could not motivate. We respected each other. I appealed to their learning style. I contacted parents, held conferences with social workers, and kept them after school for extra help. Still, they exercised their rights. They chose to fail a course. I have no doubt they learned. In fact, many have come back to me to tell me that they learned a great deal from me. Their grades didn't reflect it, though. And of course, their test scores didn't either because they just bubbled in whatever they wanted. After all, they knew they'd fail the course anyway. So while Waiting for Superman paid lip service to teachers, it also failed to acknowledge the hardest truth. Students are people too. Students are people who are making decisions about their learning. And if you don't allow their failures to count, then you can't allow their successes to count either. At what point do we allow some of the onus to move from the adults in the room onto that little person who is trying to learn to be an adult? How do we make them value education if we don't put value in their decisions about education? I'll tell you how we don't do that. We cannot say to a student, work hard in school, but I don't care enough to work hard for your school. We cannot say to a student, your teacher is the #1 factor in your success, but don't respect him or her too much because you know what they say, those who do, do, but those who can't, teach. We cannot argue that education is the only way to get out of poverty, but we refuse to fund it in an appropriate way. We cannot continue to say to a kid, your education is the most important thing, but I will make excuses for your laziness and your mistakes so that they don't even matter as decisions for you. Ultimately, Waiting for Superman made some very good points. Sadly, it missed the most important point. How can we ask a student to work within a system that we don't respect? How can we ask a generation of students to find success in a system that we simultaneously devalue and require miracles from? So with all due respect, I appreciate the thought, but I and my students don't have time to wait anymore.